Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, an HOA tried to steal the property of a Marine and claimed that his driveway is part of their HOA neighborhood. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first HOA story starts like this. So I moved into my neighborhood at the end of 2020 in San Antonio, Texas. Alongside the legal documents associated with closing on the home, there were HOA bylaws and their associated information provided. After living here for a little over 3 years, I, alongside most of our neighborhood, have come to the conclusion that the HOA is a scam, not in the way that many people call their HOAs a scam, but a full-on money laundering scheme. Here are details that led us to this conclusion. All details below are at least since 2018. So there are no HOA meetings, there's no communication from the HOA, by stamped mail per the bylaws, by email or by the neighborhood website. The HOA board was dismantled prior to us moving here, so it's just one man acting as the HOA president. The HOA management company was fired, so there's no management company. Supposedly there was also a large payout, tens of thousands of dollars, to the neighborhood after doing this, but no one knows where the funds went. There are no HOA bills sent out by stamped mail per the bylaws or otherwise. Despite no one receiving a bill in years, when they attempt to refinance or sell their home, they are hit with a bill for 5 to 10 years of unpaid dues. Usually they then do not have the time to fight it, as they do not want to risk the sale of their home, so they just end up paying it. No one knows where the money goes, but presumably our HOA president collects it with no oversight or transparency as to what he is spending it on. There is little management of our neighborhood, so the neighborhood has no amenities or events, and our fees are really supposed to be for HOA operations, maintaining the grass patch outside the neighborhood, and the external brick fence surrounding the neighborhood. We have had 2 separate incidents of cars crashing into our brick fence in the last year. The first incident, the fence someone's backyard was left exposed to a busy street for 8 months as our HOA president did not have the funds to pay for it and stated the driver's insurance should. The car was stolen, so their insurance was a no-go. Since then, a year later, the 2 missing panels have been filled with wood fence pickets, which looks pretty bad. The second incident happened a few months ago, and the homeowner patched it up with wood fence as well. The grass is also rarely upkept and usually overgrown. Again, it's just the grass outside of our brick fence, which is not a huge area. Also, when searching the county website for active HOAs, ours does not even show up. Every few months people post about it on Nextdoor and get all riled up, and then nothing happens. Someone even tried to contact Cans 5 at one point, which I guess is a news station or something, and I think another neighbor talked with a councilwoman, but nothing has resulted from this. We are finally gaining traction and have started a petition to dissolve it per the HOA guidelines, but as there are no meetings and only one effective HOA member, the president, it's incredibly hard to organize. More so, there are many rental houses in our neighborhood, so I don't think we can get the needed numbers of homeowner signatures. Any advice on what to do here? I feel like this is such a crazy thing to have been going on so long with no resolution, but I'm not sure what steps to take as a neighborhood. Many neighbors don't seem to care, as they like not getting bills but don't realize that we will all be scammed when we are trying to sell or refinance our homes and are at risk for property liens. And yeah, Ripe Stars, if you have any advice for OP, please post it below, because I'm really curious what you have to say about this. Comment number 1 said, you and your interested neighbors should go see a lawyer who specializes in HOA litigation. The first step will probably be forcing an election, at which point some of you will have to step up and volunteer. You cannot really do much else unless there's a working board. Comment number 2, this might be fraud, but it's almost certainly is not money laundering, since nothing about this setup would help someone launder illegally earned cash into seemingly legal profits. If the one-man board is just pocketing the money, it would be embezzlement. Update to the story. After I posted, I connected with a few more neighbors who were fed up with the HOA scam. We started getting more organized, meeting at someone's house every couple of weeks to figure out how to proceed. It was not easy, especially since the president had cut off all official communication, and getting everyone's attention was a challenge. The biggest hurdle was getting the signatures we needed to dissolve the HOA. According to the bylaws, we needed 75% of homeowner signatures, which was tough because, as I mentioned, a lot of homes in our neighborhood were rentals. Most renters either did not care or did not have the authority to sign anything. Our strategy was to start by focusing on the actual homeowners who lived here. We went door to door explaining what we had uncovered about the HOA and how the president was essentially running a one-man show. We showed them the lack of transparency and the fact that the neighborhood was falling apart, all the while he was likely pocketing the HOA dues. Most people we talked to were shocked. They had not realized how bad it actually was. It helped to explain that even though they were not being built right now, they would be blindsided with years of back dues when they eventually sold their house. That really hit home for people. By mid-spring we had about 60% of the signatures, still short, but we were getting there. Then we decided to tackle the rental properties. The trick was to get in touch with the actual owners, most of whom lived out of state. We tracked them down using county property records and sent out letters explaining the situation. Some responded quickly, thanking us for letting them know what was going on and agreeing to sign the petition. Others did not respond at all, which was frustrating, but not unexpected. In the meantime, one of the neighbors in our group had a connection with a lawyer who specialized in HOA law. She helped us dig through the HOA's official filings and confirmed something huge. Our HOA was not even listed as active in the county records. Legally speaking, it should not have been able to operate at all. Armed with that information, we felt like we had the upper hand. Around this time, we also started hearing from more people who had tried to sell or refinance their homes and got hit with those unpaid dues that no one had ever built for. Several of them had just paid up to avoid derailing their sales, but a few were willing to fight back. They filed complaints with the state attorney general's office accusing the HOA president of fraud. We were all hoping that would get some legal action moving, but as with most things involving government bureaucracy, it was slow going. Then something interesting happened. The president got wind of our efforts and started sending out threatening letters. These were addressed to a few of us who had been more vocal about dissolving the HOA. The letters basically accused us of trying to undermine the HOA and suggested that we could be liable for damages to the community. It was ridiculous and we knew it, but a couple of people got nervous. Fortunately, our lawyer friend reassured everyone that the letters had no legal basis and were just an intimidation tactic. We kept pushing forward and finally, in early summer, we reached the magic number of signatures, which was 75%. We submitted the petition to dissolve the HOA to the county and started the process of winding it all down. It felt like a huge victory, but we were not out of the woods yet. The president tried one last move to keep things going. He claimed that the petition was not valid because some of the signatures were from rental property owners, which he said did not count since they did not live here. Of course he was wrong. Under the HOA bylaws, a property owner's signature counted regardless of whether they lived in the house or rented it out. Again, our lawyer friend stepped in and handled it, filing a formal response with the county. A few weeks later we got the official word: the HOA was dissolved. No more fake bills, no more shady president, it was over. In the aftermath, we found out a little more about where some of our money had gone. As expected, the president had been using HOA funds for personal expenses. There was not enough hard evidence to press criminal charges because he had been smart enough to cover his tracks in most cases, but he did agree to step down and leave the neighborhood altogether. He sold his house a few months later and we have not seen or heard from him since. With the HOA gone, we had to figure out how to handle basic neighborhood maintenance. We set up a voluntary neighborhood association where people could chip in if they wanted to, and we used those funds to take care of things like mowing the grass outside the neighborhood and repairing the brick wall. It's not perfect, but at least now we know where the money is going. And yeah, Ripe Stars, by the way, I'm curious, if you would have been in this situation, would you also have instantly started up another association even though it was voluntary? Let me know how you would have dealt with this in the comments. The next one is titled HOA Demands Marines Property. So when I signed up for the Marines, I never imagined that it would become my entire life for nearly 2 decades. It really became my second family, and with problems being high in various parts of the world, I ended up facing several deployments. I even managed to get promotions and worked on base a lot of the time that I wasn't actively in duty. I climbed to the rank of Sergeant Major, which for me felt like a big accomplishment. I did have a house, but since I was mostly on base or in another country, I spent the little time I did have at home visiting my parents and not spending much time at my own house. I was making sure it was taken care of and everything, and I would go in to get some stuff or drop things off, but I was not really actively living in it. I had bought it outright basically around the same time I joined the Marines, so I did not need to worry about a mortgage or anything like that while I was gone. The thing is that being gone meant that I missed some of what was happening in the neighborhood and found out that when I was coming home for good, I was stepping right into a fight and I did not even know it until I was knee-deep into things. It turns out that a couple years before I got back, the HOA elected a new president, and this person was the definition of power-hungry. I saw it all the time when guys would get a promotion and a little bit of power over the new recruits and just go crazy with it. Well, the HOA president was clearly a Karen, and I didn't recognize her at all. It turns out she had only moved in a couple years ago and right away took over the HOA and started to make changes to things. She was actually sending out weekly newsletters that amounted to nothing aside from her praising herself and saying that she was gonna improve the community. I won't go into details, but it was actually a little bit disgusting with the extent that she was praising herself when she had not actually done anything. I was used to praise and rewards being given out to people who earned and deserved it. Now, I should not have had much of an issue with Karen and the HOA if it was only her trying to boast about how great she is, but when I got home I saw that part of my driveway was blocked off and had clearly started to be dug up. I did not approve of any type of construction, and I would have called the police right away if I did not see a notice taped to my door. It was from Karen on behalf of the HOA. She had decided that more space was needed for the HOA and that in order to improve the community, she was gonna widen the streets. She tried to use a lot of fancy words and talk about, but I knew what she was doing. Stealing my driveway, which was on my property. No HOA had the right to steal property no matter what fake rules they might have made up to claim otherwise. I decided to go and meet Karen for myself, and at this point I had not changed, so I was still in military uniform. I brought them my deed and explained that I wanted the construction to stop immediately, that it was my driveway and I needed it to park my cars in. She was also there with her husband, which, to match with her name Karen, I will just call Kevin. Kevin, you think coming up in that uniform means that we will listen to you? You have a lot of nerve trying to use your service against us. Karen, besides, we don't give exceptions for military service. I know you think you're entitled to everything because you went and played with guns for a few years, but you aren't. Me, this has nothing to do with my service and everything to do with the fact that it's my property. I'm not gonna allow the construction to continue. I will have any workers you bring trespassed from my property by police if needed. Karen, see, this is what I was saying. You think you're so big and important when really, the military is just filled with a bunch of bullies and murderers. I bet you got those shiny medals for killing a bunch of innocent people, huh? Kevin, if you interfere, you will be given fines and taken to court for disrupting HOA activity. I couldn't argue with them, since I knew that they were not gonna understand or respect my property deed. Especially since they seemed to have something against the military and hated me for it despite having no clue what I really did for all of those years. I could not reason with them, so the only thing I could do was prepare myself to get taken to court by them. I had a new property survey done, so I had proof that the driveway was fully on my property and none of it was just part of the street or something. During all my research, though, I found something interesting. So they were trying to actually dig pretty deep down, not just break the surface and repave it. Under that part of the driveway was a gas line. When workers came back, instead of calling the police, I told them that there was a gas line down there, and unless they had somebody from the city come and mark it, they would hit it and get in a lot of trouble. It was enough to get the workers to back off, which got Karen and Kevin all riled up at me. But I was not done with the two of them, because you just don't mess with a Marine that now has free time on his hands. I went to the community and a lawyer to bring up what the HOA was doing and why only certain homes were being targeted by them. The homes in questions all had a military connection, and with that I had motive for them to be harassing us. I took them to court and showed evidence that they were trying to illegally steal a part of the land of every homeowner relating to the military, stating that they threatened to sue us if we tried to intervene. They were in deep trouble, but the couple did not think that they could lose. Instead, they pointed out their own made-up bylaws about being allowed to seize property if it was needed, then claimed that I threatened and scared off the workers that were trying to work on my driveway. For that I explained I was trying to stop them from getting blown up, since Karen sent them to do a job without even checking for gas lines. Karen proceeded to go on the worst rant yet about the military being horrible and sucking. She just kept going on and on despite the fact that the judge was telling her to stop. She had to be removed from the room since she couldn't contain herself. It was clear to everybody there that she was biased and abused her power. She ended up being forced to pay for all the repairs to any damage that she had already done, plus she was in some legal trouble for the very least acting up in court. On top of all of that, once people found out what Karen and Kevin did, they were swiftly removed from high power and seen as the worst people in the entire HOA neighborhood. They might not like Marines, but they may have learned what happens when you try to mess with one. And the next story is titled Cheating Revenge. To preface this, I was madly in love with my ex-girlfriend, together for 4 years. She is quite attractive and very affectionate. She thrived on attention, to which I catered to the best of my abilities. I fondly called her Winter, and she had a cheesy name for me as well, which I choose not to divulge. Overall, I was happy. I earned significantly more than her, apart from the fact that my grandparents left me a hefty amount of money. Although she lived in her own apartment, we live in a very conservative country, live-in relationships are a big taboo, most of the stuff in it was mine. She drove my car, used my laptop, and so on. I got a crappy 32-inch LCD TV, while she bought a 60-inch Bravia and defaulted on payments, after which I had to pay for it. This was not an insulated incident either, because she had a lot of things I was paying for. I admit that I was a doormat in blissful ignorance of all the red flags. So one day I was at her place and I used her laptop to check my email. I could not remember her Wi-Fi password. Her Gmail account opened up, and as I went to sign out, a Hangouts notification popped up which said, "God knows I love your body. 7, same park. Night at my place. Wear the dress my name bought for you so I can tear it apart." There were no other texts on that chat head. She probably deleted it. It was my student. My barely 18-year-old first-year student, whom we will call Was. I cannot describe how I felt at that moment. It was a wild cocktail of emotions. I slammed her laptop and stormed out of her place. But I was foolish enough to not take any evidence, but they were supposed to meet up the next day and I could catch them red-handed. Next day, I go to the place where they were supposed to meet and catch them making out in my car. I knock on the window, ask for my keys, and tell her to never talk to me again. She was sobbing, apologizing, and so on. I asked Wuss to drop her home, and he just bolted like his tail was on fire. I can never forget the look on their faces, that sudden paleness and shocked expressions. Wuss also forgot his phone in my car. Meanwhile, I'm being bombarded with text of her apologizing. I then block her. I left this detail out of the post I made on r/relationships, but I spent the next 2 days drinking myself to oblivion, and hung over me left a lot of fuzzy details in the post. I tried calling my best friend, but he was away for a business trip, so I didn't want to disturb him. All I did for 2 whole days was drink, puke, sleep, eat, and repeat. 2 days later, when I came to my senses, I went through my bank statements and then cancelled our joint account. Well, she withdrew almost all of the money in it, out of which a large amount was mine. I was still being bombarded with texts and calls, but sometime during my drunken furor, I cracked my phone's screen and thus rendering it useless. So I got my backup phone and see a barrage of notifications. As it turns out, she posted on Facebook that I'd been cheating on her and that I was an emotionally manipulative, two-faced douchebag who sleeps with his students. We had a lot of mutual friends, most of who blocked me then. Someone even created a WhatsApp group and they abused me and said horrible things about me. She even turned my sister against me. Our father left our mother for a woman half his age. Our mother got depressed and died after a few years, and thus she was overly sensitive about infidelity. But my ex was also horribly manipulative and she pushed all the right buttons to make my sister hate me. The ex was hitting all the past wounds. She knew about our father. She said things like "chip off the old block" and "he's just like your father" and many more horrible made-up things. She got very depressed because of this, and also several of her friends were on my ex's side. This has probably put a permanent strain on our relationship. Word about ex's Facebook posts spread like wildfire in the college. They pinned a shy, socially awkward girl as being my mistress and shamed that poor girl. To be honest, I've never even noticed her. The revenge, finally, the part everyone was waiting for. She effectively ruined my reputation and goodwill I had created in my community and among my peers, and put my job in jeopardy. She turned my only family, my sister, against me. I later showed her the apology text my ex sent me, and then she apologized to me because clearly I was the victim, not her. Several people here suggested I should contact a lawyer, which I did, so the next day when I went for work to take a few days off, I see Wuss and his father for me. Somehow I resisted the urge to punch him. He apologized and told me that he would do anything so as to not get him out of college. I asked him if he would testify in my favor, and he obliged. I tell him that I won't be able to save him because that was out of my power. He told me he would still testify in my favor, and he sent me several screenshots of his chats with the ex, thus confirming that she was cheating on me and not the other way around. I pressed charges under IPC, Indian Penal Code Section 499, defamation 500 and 504, intentional insult with intent to provoke breach of the peace. The day of the hearing was frankly the best day of my life since the breakup. She said a lot of malignant things about me, was yelling to the point that the judge had to scold her. Her lawyer asked for an out-of-court settlement, but I politely declined because it's not only my life she has inevitably screwed over, it would have been a lot more cheaper and I would have gotten some dough, but screw her. This was quite a scandal, but since I have a tenure of 5 years, they cannot fire me. I was transferred to another college instead. Same pay, same incentives, but I will have to travel a bit more than I prefer. As for her, she is knee-deep in crap. She was a librarian, she is a library science major in the institution I worked for and was fired as soon as I notified the authorities. The reason being, philandering with a student. This has also screwed up her chances at procuring a job in the future. She also faces jail time, as mentioned under Section 500 and 504, which can extend up to imprisonment for over 2 years. A fine or even both, and Indian jails, jeez. She can post for bail, however, Wuss has been expelled. The money she stole, that would be going to her lawyer. My best friend went to her apartment, got my stuff back for me, which included a futon, a refrigerator, an air conditioner, a laptop and several expensive electronics and some jewelry. She would keep the TV though because it is in her name. She would probably have to sell it because lawyers ain't cheap. She has no job now and no savings. This is in India, and as you might have guessed, people are very conservative here. At some point she will have to reach out to her parents, who still think that she is a virgin. And yeah guys, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. And also check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on Spotify, Amazon, Audible and other podcast platforms. You will often find exclusive episodes and early access to new content. Furthermore, please check out my Patreon by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or my YouTube membership program for even more exclusive stories. Thank you so much, and I will see you again tomorrow.